Welcome back to another video on Python. Let's get back to coding and all that great stuff. Alright, let's go to okay, let's continue from here. This sentence. To retain the previous behavior, Python's UTF-8 mode may be disabled with the Python UTF-8 is equal to 0 environment variable, or the -x UTF-8 is equal to command line option. Alright, let's try to do that. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do this. Open up Visual Studio Code. We can experiment with Python. No worries. We can disable stuff. We can enable stuff. No worries at all. No worries at all. So let's get right into it. First, I just want to do something. So, okay. Alright, here we go. Let's do this. And hold on. Let me. Okay. So we're gonna try to use these things. First of all, we're gonna ask our ChatGPT. We're gonna ask ChatGPT to help us out with this, because I don't know how to use this stuff. We're gonna go deep into this, do some digging and stuff, disable stuff, enable stuff, mess around with it. Oh, don't tell me it hung up on me again. Oh, it did. It did hang up on me. Oh, please no. Come on, don't hang up on me. Come on. This is not good. Task manager. Alright, so I had to restart everything because it just hung up on me and it was not responding. But everything's alright now, and I'm just gonna resize to 1080. There we go, and go back to full screen. Hopefully it's not gonna hang up on me this time. Open up Visual Studio Code. Hold on, it is hanging up again. Oh, don't tell me. Not again, bro. This should not happen again. Come on, work. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to fix this again. Alright, I restarted everything once again. Hopefully, it won't happen again. But, let's see what happens. Let me just refresh stuff. Okay, I'm gonna open up the applications one by one, so stuff doesn't mess up again. All right, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it's gonna open up. Hopefully it's gonna open up. All right, it did. And now I just want to open up Chrome. Hold on, yeah, I see stuff. It's loading, so I think there might be some sort of problem in the background. Alright, alright, Chrome is... Come on, open up, open up. Alright, it did. Restore. Let's go. Let's go, come on. Did it work? Yes, it did. It did work. Alright, so now if I go full screen, it's not gonna mess up anything. Hopefully. I think this was... Alright. There we go. Alright, please don't mess up. Don't hang up on me, please. Come on. It is working. We are back. Okay, so let's copy all of this. It is extremely slow as compared to my last video. So I want to understand the last part by implementing it and later on undoing it. So stuff goes back to normal. Excellent, that's a great way to see what's happening under the hood. So, verify your current default encoding. Yeah, you people remember what we were doing in the last video, right? UTF-8 and stuff. If you don't have explicit encoding, it's going to go to the default UTF-8. Python is going to do that. UTF-8. Alright. So first, run this small script. Okay. I have Python 3.15. Hold on, let me see. What? It didn't start? It's been like so long. It didn't start. What is wrong with this? There's something definitely wrong with the applications right now. Everything is just so slow. I don't understand. This is so slow. It's actually annoying. Start up already. Start up. Come on, start up. It still hasn't started up. It still hasn't started up. I don't understand what is going on with this. Alright, there we go. It started up. We have the terminal. And we have the... Alright, can we type something? Ask a question. What do you mean? I don't mean to do that. Debug console, terminal. Let me just delete this. Oh my gosh, everything is so messed up right now. Terminal. Alright, go back to the plain simple terminal. Come on, load. Why are you taking so long? There we go. The terminal has loaded, and let me check what kind of Python version I have, which it is not showing right now. I do not know what kind of version it is showing right now. And now we have entered the interpreter. If I type exit, should exit the interpreter. Let me just type it up over here. Let me just type it up over here. Python. No. What was the command to check the versions that I have? Wait. Let me. How do I? I have multiple Python versions. Multiple Python versions installed. I want to select a specific version, so I'm gonna check how to do that. Let me see how I can select a specific version. And then do all this. Wow, this is so slow, man. This is so slow. How has this become so slow? Alright, Python version. Python version. Let me see. Come on, type, bro, type. What is wrong with this? This is unacceptable. Version 3.15 right now. Alright. I have 3.15 right now. Why is this so slow? Oh my gosh. Unbelievably slow today. Windows on VirtualBox today, it is very slow. To ensure, great, since you're using Python 3.15, we can proceed with the steps using that version specifically. Here's how you can test the encoding behavior both with and without the UTF-8 mode. Default encoding. Okay, alright, so first we have to check what is the default encoding for Python 3.15. Right? Well, that's going to be, obviously, it's going to, if there's nothing specified, it's going to default to UTF-8. That's what we read yesterday, right? Look. Other language changes. It says, if there's no explicit encoding, it's automatically going to default to UTF-8. This is Python 3.15. Look. But alright, we can do it for the practical stuff, for the sake of the practical stuff, right? So let's do it. Also, whatever stuff or code you give me, clearly explain what each part does, so I understand as well, because I'm learning Python. First, I want to check the default encoding in Python 3.15 to understand what encoding Python is using by default. Alright, let's type it up. So first I want to type Python 3.15 and then a space with a dash C. Alright, I didn't give a space. Alright, there we go. So why are we typing Python 3.15? This runs Python 3.15 specifically in case you have multiple versions installed. It tells your system to use that version of Python. Alright, I get it. Dash C, this is a flag that tells Python to execute a one-liner instead of running a script from a file. It's execute a one-liner. Yeah, this is actually a one line, right? Also, remember I'm in the VS Code terminal, so give me the code according to that. Yeah, this is PowerShell, right? This is PowerShell. Alright. Dash C, this flag tells us to run a single line of Python code directly from the terminal without needing a script file. Alright, so dash C, you understand what it is. So I'm going to type Python. I'm going to type Python first. Python, no, there's no space in it? I was actually giving a space. There's no space in this. Python 3.15. Alright, my bad. After that, there is a space with a dash C, which is a flag. Look, if I look at it, this looks like a single line, right? It's a Python code directly from the terminal without needing a script file. So if I needed a script file, if I was running this from a script file, I would remove the dash C, right? It makes sense. So since this is a single line of code, and we're running it directly from the terminal without needing without a script file, basically a file, I guess. That is why we're using dash C. All right. I mean, I can use dash C in other parts. Like whenever I'm generally coding, I can use dash C to directly run code in the terminal. It's pretty useful. I didn't know about this. Import sys. Okay, now we have space with inverted quotes, quotation marks. I don't know if that's inverted. I'm just gonna say quotation marks, double quotation marks. Import space sys, and then we have a comma. Local. I don't know if that is local or it's locale. We import the necessary modules to check the encoding. Alright, so these are import sys and local. So I guess these are two modules that are being imported, and they're going to help us check the encoding. Then we're using a print statement. We have a semicolon. You forgot to explain the semicolon and the quotation marks and the comma and the bracket start and stop. Yeah, I want to understand what's going on. No, not like this. Just continue explaining it like last time with the rest of the code, one by one. Is it still explaining? I did not need that. There we go. Hopefully it's gonna explain how I needed it to explain. Alright, so hopefully this is gonna work. Yeah, I get it. Okay. What? Alright. You forgot this was VS Code terminal, not bash. Also, tell me, does VS Code use PowerShell as default? In VS Code, the default terminal could be different depending on your settings and your operating system. Does VS Code use PowerShell by default? It depends on your operating system VS Code settings, which here's how it works for different platforms. On Windows, by default, so this is it. Everybody, look at this. It's important. Why is this? Let me just reset. 100%. Alright, so on Windows, by default, VS Code uses, on Windows, by default, Visual Studio Code uses PowerShell in the integrated terminal. This is because PowerShell is the default terminal in many recent Windows versions. Alright, PowerShell is the default terminal. If you open a new terminal window in VS Code, you're likely in PowerShell unless you've changed it to default terminal. So, most probably it is PowerShell. And you can see it's written over here, PowerShell. So this is PowerShell. Now, alright, so let's go back to the topic. Now, this is it. So, explain the, hold on. So, give me the code for the VS Code PowerShell one, not bash. Yeah, this is it. Alright, so, where were we? So we have a bit of a different stuff here. Before we get to this, it's a pretty long command. I mean, Python -x. Now explain each and every part of this. Script one by one, including the commas, quotations, dash or anything. Alright, so we do have -x. What is -x? This is a command line option used to pass additional arguments to the Python interpreter when running a script. Okay, additional arguments. -x is specifically used to set certain runtime behaviors for Python. Certain behavior that is going to be at runtime. Why it's important? In this case, -x indicates that you are going to specify a setting for Python's runtime behavior. Okay, I understand for this that -x is going to like set some sort of property or some sort of setting during the runtime. It's going to do something different at the runtime. Namely how it handles UTF-8 encoding. Alright. It's going to help us in the runtime stuff. UTF-8 is equal to 0. This is a setting you're passing to Python. It tells Python how to handle its default encoding. It's a setting you're passing to Python. It tells Python how to handle its default encoding. UTF-8 is equal to 0 tells Python to disable UTF-8 mode. Hold on, this is where we were, right? Yeah, this is it. To retain the previous behavior, Python's UTF-8 mode may be disabled with the Python UTF-8 is equal to 0 environment variable or the -x UTF-8 is equal to command line option. And this is what we're using right now. As you can see over here, we are going to, what this means is that if you want the default behavior, the previous behavior, before all this update, UTF-8 can be disabled, right? And how do we disable it? Python UTF-8 mode may be disabled with the environment variable, which we're not using right now. We're actually using the command line option, which is -x UTF-8 is equal to 0 to disable UTF-8 mode. UTF-8 is equal to 0 tells Python to disable UTF-8 mode and use the system's default local encoding instead. Alright. If you were to leave this out or use UTF-8 is equal to 1, Python will use UTF-8 encoding by default. If you were to leave this out, if you remove this now, or if you use UTF-8 is equal to 1, Python will use UTF-8 encoding by default, which is actually what it's supposed to do after, based on the update in Python 3.15. If there's no explicit encoding, we don't specify what kind of encoding there is, Python is automatically going to default. It's going to use UTF-8 by default. But since we're disabling the UTF-8 mode, the new update, we're disabling that, we're going to see what happens in the default local encoding. What's important is a part of Python's runtime configuration. Disable UTF-8 is useful if you want to test or work with an encoding that is specific to your system local. For example, on a Windows machine, it might default to CP1252 instead of UTF-8. All right, this is so informative, incredible. This is incredible. And then I guess a space and a -c. We already know what this is. This is a flag, command line flag. It's going to tell us. It's going to tell Python to run a code directly in the terminal. Small piece of code from the command line, yeah. Instead of executing full script. Following the code you want to run will be placed inside quotation marks following -c. Following -c, coming after -c. That is exactly what we're trying to do. But the previous explanation was a bit different. And now we're going to import some modules. The first space and then the double quotation marks. Import LCLE. These are, I need to, okay, a space. And then a semicolon. Also, yeah, this is actually not so different. It's clearly explained. It is actually similar to the previous explanation. Without -c, Python would expect to execute a Python script from a file. Yep, exactly. If -c is removed from here, Python would think that we have to execute a code from a file, right? By using -c, you're giving it a one-liner or a small block of code to run right away. We're directly running code in the command line over here in the terminal, which we usually don't do, right? We usually put it in a file and run it over here and then press play, run it. But since we're not doing that, we're running code in the terminal, we're using -c. Command line flag, it's a flag. This is a Python code you're executing directly. Okay. Now SYS and local import. This is a Python keyword used to bring in external modules from outside, so you can use their functionality. All right. Sys, this is a module that gives you access to system-specific parameters. You will use it to check the default encoding. All right. System-specific parameters. Local is obviously going to be another module that handles localization. We use it here because it is related to system settings like encoding. I didn't know that. System settings. Encoding, we're going to be dealing with system settings like encoding, okay. Why are we using system? Because we're going to be dealing with system-specific parameters. It's going to give us access to those system-specific parameters, this module. If you don't use it, we're not going to get access to the system-specific parameters. A local is going to help us manage the local stuff, system settings, encoding. We import system local because we'll be using sys.getDefaultEncoding to get the system's default encoding. Alright, this is so cool. I'm understanding it. By importing local, we could do other things later to system-specific settings. We could do other things later, although it is not directly used in this line. Mm-hmm. The comma is used to separate multiple items in the import statement. Yeah, this allows you to import multiple modules in a single line of code. Why it is used, we're importing two modules in one statement to save space and keep things concise. All right, this is so cool. The semicolon is used to separate multiple statements on a single line in Python. What? We're running multiple statements? Why did I not think about that? Oh, we are. Because after this, we're going to use a print statement. Okay. So, okay, I get it. Multiple statements on a single line in Python. Separate multiple statements. It is not mandatory, but it is an optional way to write multiple statements on one line instead of splitting them onto multiple lines. Yeah, that would take too much space, and there are other random problems. Why is it important? It is optional in Python and it lets you run two statements, importing modules and printing the encoding on one line. Importing modules, which we're doing in the first part, and printing the encoding on one line, which is probably going to be the second part, if I'm not wrong. It is just for convenience here, but you could also write each statement on its own line, but using the semicolon condenses the code into one line for readability or compactness. Yeah, obviously that is why we're using the -C, the command line flag. We want everything on one line. Print default encoding. Now this is what we're going into print. This is a built-in Python function used to display output to the console. Inside the parentheses of print, you place what you want to display. We want to display the default encoding, right? Oh, okay. So this is just a string, and this is gonna be the default encoding for your system. Oh, okay. I understand this. Well, first, what this is gonna do, we're disabling the default system encoding with this UTF-8 is gonna be turned off after this, and then we're gonna see the default encoding for the system, I guess. Inside the parentheses, default encoding. This is a string. Strings in Python are enclosed in either single quotes or double quotes. Single quotes or double quotes, okay. We can use both for string. In this case, single quotes are used. Why it's important, the string is printed as a label. The string is printed as a label before the result. So you'll see something like default encoding, yeah. Depending on what your system default encoding is. This is a method from the sys module. Sys.get default encoding. This is a method from the sys module. Alright. We're taking out this method from inside the sys module. That is why we imported sys. That returns the default encoding used by Python on your system. Why it's important, this will tell you what encoding Python is using for input-output operations, which could be UTF-8 or CP1252 or something else depending on the system settings, comma. Alright, so let us just type the code. Hopefully you're understanding all this. Pretty simple. Now, this is going to be the second statement, if I'm not wrong, the print statement. Single quotes because this is going to be a simple sentence, which is going to tell us the default encoding. Close it. Another single quote. You can just add this. It's not necessary. And now, comma. In the print function, these separate, yeah. The comma in the print function is used to separate multiple arguments. So this is the first argument in the print statement. In the print function, I'm sorry. We can have multiple, I didn't know this, we can have multiple arguments in a print function. We're, used to separate multiple arguments passed to the function. We're passing stuff to the function. We're passing arguments. In this case, we're passing multiple arguments to the function. We can separate them using comma. Here it separates the string from the result of the function. Alright, the first argument is the string, and the second argument is the result of this, this method, which we have taken out, right? We imported the module sys, and then from the module sys, we took out a method called this. We took it out from the module sys. It's basically so simple. Like, you import something. In this case, we imported the sys module, and then from the sys module, we took out this method. We took it out. We used it. As simple as that. We used this method, and where did we get this method from? We got it from the sys module. The comma makes sure both parts get printed on the same line, separated by a space, which is automatically inserted by the print function. Yeah, I don't know much about spacing in Python right now. I don't want to go into that topic. It's a whole big topic itself. I want to type the code. Here we go. I actually understand now, and I can write this myself as well. It's just I just need to know what method. What is the name of the method? Oh, I forgot to tell you. Oh my gosh, 100%. All right. So hold on. Just for the time being, it's okay. Just zoom in. So this sys, you can see this is sys, the name of the module over here. Import sys. You see that? Import sys. And then from sys, what are we using? We're using get default encoding method. So out of this module, we're using this method. Hopefully you get what I'm trying to say. Get default encoding. And then this is a method, so it's going to have these parentheses, brackets. I'm just going to call those brackets because I really have not been in practice with brackets, so I might mess up the names. Yeah, the code has to be in quotation marks. Reset to 100%. So if I run this, it's gonna turn off the. So if when I run this, it's first gonna turn off UTF-8 mode in the new update, and then it's gonna tell us the default encoding for the system. Okay, there it is. So the default encoding is UTF-8, and why is that so? Because for starters, we're using Python 3.15, right? And based on the latest update, if no encoding is specified, Python 3.15 is automatically going to use UTF-8. And since we turned off UTF-8, right, we turned it off, that means there is no specification. This is the same thing as no explicit specification. Look, I'm going to tell it to you simply. We know that based on the latest updates on 3.15, right? If it's not clearly stated that that any sort of encoding is not there, right? It's not clearly stated what kind of encoding there is. In that case, when there's nothing stated, Python 3.15 is automatically going to use UTF-8 by default. And this is the same case. We've turned off the UTF-8 mode. It's off. What this actually means is the same. This means that UTF-8 is off, so there is nothing clearly stated now. We don't know. Python doesn't know. We don't know what kind of encoding is there. Everything is off. There's nothing clearly stated. So we know, based on the latest update, that when this happens, when nothing is specified, Python 3.15 is automatically going to use UTF-8 by default. And you can see the default is UTF-8. So it makes sense. So I understand this now. And hopefully you understood it now as well. This is what was, let me revise everything. So this is the Python to use the specific version of Python. So hold on. To make sure, let me double check what version we're using. We're still using Python 3.15. Look. We're still using Python 3.15. Alright? So I hopefully you get it. This is the Python. You type this, so we're forcing Python to use the current version of Python that we have. Dash x UTF-8 is equal to 0. This is used to turn off the default, whatever version encoding that version of Python has, it's going to turn that off. Alright? It's good. This is going to turn off the mode, the encoding mode for whatever Python version you have. I think it did turn it off for Python 3.15. I don't know if it will turn if the same thing is used for other versions. I don't know about that, but it works for Python 3.15. That's for sure. You know what -c is now? It's a command line flag. It helps us run short pieces of code in the command line without. And this helps. How does this help us? We don't need to write a full Python file. and then run it. It saves us time. And we just need to put the code in the quotation marks, and that's going to run the code. But there's also some beneficial things here. You can import stuff, and then you can separate multiple lines of code using the semicolon. We just have 2 lines of code here. First is the import statement. And the best thing about this is that there are 2 import statements, but both the modules are in 1 line, and they've been separated by a comma and a space. That's the best thing about it. Now the second statement is the print statement, separated by a semicolon. This shows us the second statement. So in this print function, right, this print method function, there are 2 arguments that are being passed to it. Who's passing the arguments? We are passing the arguments. The first argument is a string. It's a simple sentence. It's not doing anything. It's just gonna say default encoding. This part is doing nothing. It's just showing us some letters. Now this is the main part. So this is the first argument. This is the second argument. The second argument is where the main stuff happens. So from the sys module, this is the sys module, it's the same name. We are, from that, inside that module, we're using this method called getDefaultEncoding. So that this is gonna fetch the default encoding that Python uses on your system right now. And then we end the quotation mark, because this is the part. Inside the quotation marks, you only write the code. There might be other stuff, but this is what I know right now, based on my knowledge. ChatGPT. Thank you so much, ChatGPT. Thank you so much. You've enhanced my knowledge. I've understood so much. Alright, so since I'm using Python 3.15, I used this code and ran it. And after it showed the default encoding as UTF-8. Lol. Makes sense, because based on the recent Python 3.15 update, if there's no explicit encoding stated, Python 3.15 will automatically default to UTF-8, right? So this is the same scenario after turning it off. Correct me if I'm wrong. So let's see what ChatGPT has to say. I'm absolutely right. Look at that. Let me break down why the output showed you UTF-8 is as a default encoding, even after you disable UTF-8 mode with the option. It makes perfect sense based on the recent updates. As I said, as I told you, that's what I understand. Python 3.15 introduced UTF-8 as a default encoding when no explicit encoding is provided in input output operations, like when you open a file or print to the console. Input output operations are opening a file or printing to the console. These are input output. Open a file and print to the console. Alright. This means that regardless of the system's environment, Python will default to UTF encoding unless told otherwise. What happens when you disable this mode? When you run the command, you're explicitly telling Python to disable this mode. Normally using without this flag, Python 3.15 uses by default for its internal options. However, even with this option, even without this flag, we know that Python uses UTF-8 by default for its internal operations, when there is obviously nothing stated. But, however, even with the option turned off, even with the option, which is disabling the mode, Python will still use the default system local encoding, which may or may not be UTF-8 depending on your system, but in your case, its results show UTF-8 because on most modern systems, especially Linux and Mac operating system, the default system local encoding is already UTF-8. I did not know that. Because based on my understanding, my limited knowledge, I understand that this is a recent update of Python, but I did not know about this. So that changes my whole perspective, actually. On most modern systems, alright, Mac, Linux, the default system local encoding is actually already UTF-8. So even when you disable the explicit UTF-8 setting, Python still defaults to UTF-8 because that's what's set on your system. On Windows, the default encoding might be something like this, but with Python 3.15, it defaults to UTF-8 if no other encoding is specified. In short, with this disabled, Python 3.15 will default UTF-8 since Python 3.17. It's been working toward making UTF-8 the default for event operations. All right. This has been since 3.7. All right. With this option, Python tries to use the system's. You know what's happening, right? With this disables the default UTF-8 mode. So imagine it has been disabled. Now what Python tries to do is use the system's local encoding instead of forcing UTF-8. But if my system's default local encoding is already UTF-8, you will see UTF-8 as a result. So that makes sense. So that has changed my perspective. So this actually also means that my system's default encoding is UTF-8, and that is why it showed UTF-8 as a result. But if my system local encoding was something else, like CP1252, that would show up instead. But it isn't, and that is why it showed UTF-8. So UTF-8 is my default encoding. Well, everything makes sense right now. This is what it means. See also PEP 686 for further details. Contributed by Adam Turner and GH 133711. PEP 686 written by Inada Naoki. Alright, but we also want to re-enable. Alright. Everything works. Now I just want to go back to normal and enable whatever we did. Alright, I'm going to end the video. Before that, but before I do that, I need to enable whatever we did. So how do we enable it again? To re-enable the UTF-8 mode or reset everything normal, you'll simply need to remove the -x UTF-8 is equal 0 option from your command and ensure Python is running with UTF-8 as default. Here's how you can do that. Okay, so first we're going to remove the flag. Let's do that. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, Python, but first I want to check, am I still using the version 3.1.5? Yes, I am, 3.1.1.5. Now type Python dash, remove the dash, don't want to use this. Okay, I've used the, I've removed the option UTF-8 is equal 0 because that is used to disable it. So if we remove, since this option is used to disable the default UTF-8 mode, if we remove it, that should enable the default mode, right? I don't know if it makes sense. Okay, this disables the mode, and since you want to go back to the default behavior, simply omit this flag when running Python. Python will automatically default to UTF-8 for most systems. Alright. So just remove it and run everything else. Alright. -C. And now the statements import sys, and there were two modules, and this with a semicolon, and then a print statement. Inside the print statement, we have we're going to see with the default, also, let me tell you, I can change this statement, it doesn't matter. This is the default encoding. You see, it doesn't matter. This is what actually matters. From sys, we're going to use the method get default encoding and end this. Hold on, why isn't it blue? It should be blue. Did I do something wrong here? Oh, I did do something wrong. It's local. I added a T here. And there's something wrong here as well. Get default. No, this is okay. Oh, alright. I get it. I'm supposed to, I added a double quotation mark here, which I'm not supposed to do because that would create two. I'm actually just supposed to put the, whatever code it is inside a single quotation, double quotation mark. Alright, so with the X statement gone, let's run this. This is the default encoding, UTF-8. So it worked. It's UTF-8 now. So, what I got? Awesome. It looks like you're back to the default behavior and UTF-8 is still the default encoding, which means everything is working. I didn't use the environment variable. I just used the command line option. When you remove the option flag and ran the command again, Python automatically used UTF-8 because in Python 3.15 and later, UTF-8 is default unless otherwise specified. So, alright, so let's end the video. Command line options. So key points to remember. Command line options like -x UTF-8 is equal to 0 only apply for the duration of that command. Oh, they only apply for the duration of that command. Once you remove it, Python goes back to its default behavior, which in your case is UTF-8. The Python UTF-8 environment variable is a system-wide setting. If you were to set it, it would force Python to always use UTF-8 or not whenever you run Python, no matter what command line flags you use. Oh, that is so scary. I mean, not scary, but if somebody doesn't know about this, it would mess up the work. You see, because it says if you were to set it, it would force Python to always use UTF-8 whenever you run Python. So if we had set the environment variable, and that would be a system-wide setting, and that would mean that no matter what command line flags you use, so if we ran this code again, even with the UTF-8 is equal to 0 flag not mentioned, even with it not mentioned, that would still not make things normal. It would still not overcome the problem. It would still make the system use UTF-8. It would force the system Python to use UTF-8. So using any sort of code would not overwrite it. It would not fix the problem. So environment variable looks like it's more powerful here. So there's no lingering changing to undo because the command line flag, which we did in the terminal, only applies temporarily, and once you remove it, you're back to normal behavior. And what if we don't remove it and just turn off the system or close VS Code? Great question. What happens if you don't remove the flag? The key here is that the -x UTF-8 is equal 0 flag is a command line option, and it only applies to the specific Python command that you run in the terminal. It doesn't make permanent changes to your system or Python's default behavior. So if you close VS Code or shut down your system, the next time you open VS Code or run a new terminal, the -x UTF-8 is equal to 0 flag will not be there unless you explicitly add it again to your command. Oh, it won't be there. So if we just shut down our system or just close VS Code, that flag is gone. It's gone. It's not going to affect the system again. That's temporarily until that terminal is open, until our system is open. It's going to work till that time, I guess. This is because command line flags like -x UTF-8 is equal 0 are only in effect for that specific command. Once you close VS Code or restart your system, Python will not remember the flag. No permanent effect. Why? Because Python does not store the state of command line options. I get it now. I totally get it. Command line options are temporary. Python does not store the state of those command line options. So if it were to store the state of the command line options, if it were to do that, that would make a big problem because even if we close Python, even if we close VS Code in that case, and even if we restart our system, that state would still be there. That would be a big problem for us. But Python does not do that. It does not store the state of the command line options. That is so useful. As soon as you restart VS Code, so even if we restart VS Code, simply close it and open it again, or run a new Python session, it will revert to the default behavior, which in Python 3.15 and later means UTF-8 by default. So if you don't remove this flag, right, if we forget about removing it, it will only affect the current terminal session. Once you close VS Code or restart your system, the next Python command you run won't automatically use this flag. Alright, we're done with this. Hopefully you understood this. Today we did some command line stuff. using the terminal, you learn about this code. I did not know this, that we could run code inside the terminal, which is so useful. Wow, that is so useful. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. Have a great day. Have a very nice day. Thank you. I'll be seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.